Welcome to Mystic English, where every story teaches you not just English, but also something that your heart needs to hear. Have you ever looked around and felt nothing? You're not angry, you're not crying, but deep inside, something feels off. You have friends, you have a phone, maybe even a job, but you also have this feeling like your life is moving and you're not. This story is for you, the one who feels lost for no clear reason. Because sometimes the most painful moments are the ones we can't explain. Aaron had everything a young man was supposed to want. He had a decent job at a tech firm, a clean apartment, 2 close friends he could call on weekends, and even a longtime girlfriend who said she loved him. On the surface, his life looked good, better than many, in fact. But inside Aaron, something was wrong. He didn't know what it was. There were no loud breakdowns, no tragedy, no big heartbreak. And yet, every morning, he woke up feeling like he was carrying something heavy on his chest. His heart didn't race, it just sat there, quiet and confused. Sometimes he would open his fridge and stare at it for a full minute, not because he was hungry, but because he couldn't decide what he wanted. He would sit on his bed scrolling through reels, and 3 hours would pass, and still, nothing inside him would feel alive. "What's wrong with me?" he asked himself one night, lying awake in the dark. He wasn't depressed in the dramatic way movies show. He wasn't crying. He just felt lost, in a way that didn't even make sense, and that made it worse. Because how do you fix something when you don't even know what's broken? Aaron had gotten good at pretending. At work, he laughed when his manager made boring jokes. On calls with his friends, he smiled at the right moments, said, "I'm good, bro," when asked. He even replied to, "How was your day?" with, "It was chill," even when it wasn't. Because how do you explain to someone that everything looks okay, but nothing feels okay? He didn't have answers, just noise. Noise in his mind, noise on his phone, noise in his life. At dinner, he barely tasted the food. He had stopped looking people in the eyes without realizing it. His girlfriend Rachel noticed the change. She asked him gently, "Are you tired of me?" He shook his head immediately. He wasn't tired of her. He was tired of himself, the version of him that didn't know what he wanted anymore. The version that couldn't feel joy, even when everything was in place. One night, they went to a rooftop cafe, their favorite place, where they used to laugh for hours. But that night, Aaron was quiet, not sad, just silent, as if his soul had forgotten how to speak. Rachel held his hand across the table and said softly, "I miss the old you." Aaron looked away. Because the truth was, he did too. It was a Sunday evening when it happened, not an event, not a tragedy. Just a quiet moment that cracked something inside. Aaron was walking back home after visiting his parents. His father had spoken about rising fuel prices. His mother had packed food for him as usual, and the house still smelled like it did when he was 10. Everything was familiar. But that night, as he stood in the elevator, alone and looking at the glowing floor numbers, something in his chest twisted. A strange thought passed through his mind. I don't feel like I belong anywhere anymore. Not at work, not in his relationship, not even in his own skin. It wasn't because people didn't love him. It was because he didn't love where he was in life. Not the job, which felt mechanical. Not the relationship, which had become routine. And not the dreams he once had, which now felt too distant, too childish. He remembered once wanting to be a filmmaker, not famous. Just someone who told stories that made people feel less alone. But life had other plans, or maybe he had stopped planning. He had traded fire for comfort, passion for salary, and meaning for stability. And now, the invisible weight was crushing him. Not because his life was falling apart, but because it had quietly drifted away from who he truly was. It was a Tuesday when Aaron took a late-night cab home. He had stayed late at work, not because he had to, but because he didn't want to go home and sit with his thoughts. The cab driver was an old man, maybe in his 60s, with silver in his beard and kindness in his voice. For a while, they drove in silence. The city lights blurred past. Aaron stared out the window. Then the driver asked, "Tough day?" Aaron gave his usual half-smile. "Same as always." The man nodded and said something Aaron didn't expect. "I used to feel that way too, for 20 years. Aaron looked at him, surprised. The man continued, "Every day I did what I was supposed to, paid bills, raised kids, and smiled at neighbors. But every night, I felt like I had left someone behind me." Aaron didn't say anything, but he felt something shift. "What changed?" he finally asked. The driver smiled. "One day, I got tired of lying to myself. That was all it took." Those words, simple, unpolished, hit Aaron like a wave. Not because they were new, but because they came from someone who had lived through the same fog. It wasn't advice. It was recognition. And in that moment, Aaron didn't feel so crazy or so alone. That night, Aaron didn't open Instagram. He didn't turn on music. He just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above him. The words of the old cab driver echoed in his chest. "One day I got tired of lying to myself." Aaron had never thought of it that way. Was he lying to himself? He didn't drink, he didn't party, he didn't run away from responsibility. But maybe, just maybe, he had been running away from his own truth, from the part of him that wanted more than just monthly paychecks and weekend dinners, from the part of him that once imagined stories, that once stayed up all night filming scenes with an old camera and bad lighting and 0 followers. From the part of him that used to feel something, joy, fear, wonder, before everything became fine. He got up, walked to the bathroom mirror, and looked at himself for longer than usual. His eyes looked tired, not physically, but emotionally, like they had been carrying a quiet sadness for too long. And for the first time in a long time, he whispered the truth. "I don't like the life I've built." Not because it was bad, but because it wasn't his. It was a version of life he had accepted, not chosen. That single sentence didn't fix everything, but it was the beginning of something honest. And in a world full of filters and fake smiles, honesty is a kind of rebellion. The next day wasn't different on the outside. Aaron still went to work, still answered emails, still sat through meetings. But inside, something had cracked, and once it cracked, light started to enter. He noticed things he hadn't before. The way his coworker smiled but looked tired behind her eyes. The way his boss rushed through the day was like someone running from his own thoughts. The whole office felt like a room full of people pretending, just like him. At lunch, instead of scrolling through his phone, Aaron walked outside and sat on the edge of the pavement near a tree. He watched cars pass by. He breathed. He didn't know what he was doing. He just knew he didn't want to go numb again. That evening, instead of heading straight home, he took a detour to an old part of the city he used to love. A street filled with small cafes, music shops, and artists selling paintings no one ever bought. It reminded him of something, not of success, not of plans, but of feeling alive. He didn't post about it, he didn't tell anyone. It was just for him. A small act of rebellion, not against society, but against the part of himself that had given up without realizing it. And sometimes, all it takes to begin again is to stop running from your own heart. Weeks passed. Not much changed, but everything felt different. Aaron didn't quit his job or leave the city. He didn't shave his head or fly to some distant mountain. But he began showing up, not just in rooms, but in his own life. He spoke a little more honestly. When Rachel asked how he was, he didn't just say, "Fine." He said, "I'm figuring things out." And she didn't walk away, she listened. Some days were still heavy. He still felt lost sometimes. But now, he wasn't afraid of the feeling, because he knew it was part of being alive. He started spending Sunday evenings doing things that made him feel something again. Not productive things, just human things. Sitting by the lake, watching an old film without touching his phone, sketching random scenes from memory. No goal, no audience, just a connection. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was coming home to himself. He hadn't found all the answers, but he had found a direction, inward. And that was enough to take the next step. Because the truth is, most people don't lose their lives to failure or disaster. They lose it slowly. To silence, to pretending, to forgetting who they are. But the moment you tell yourself the truth, even if it hurts, you begin to wake up. If you feel lost right now, not because of something big, but because nothing feels real anymore, you're not alone. If you wake up and everything looks fine, but inside you feel tired, like a part of you is missing, you're not broken. You're just being called back to your truth, the truth you buried to fit in, to please people, to survive. And now your heart is whispering, come home. Come back to what made you feel alive. And if you don't know what that is anymore, it's okay. You'll find it, slowly, gently, but only if you stop lying to yourself. You don't need to be fixed. You just need to remember who you are. This is Mystic English. We tell stories that teach you English through emotions, not textbooks. If this story touched your heart like it did ours, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And comment below. I may feel lost, but I'm not giving up, because even lost roads still lead somewhere.